What is up? And welcome back to the DLF team series. 32 teams. We are going through every single one of them and telling you about every fantasy relevant player. And to do so, we bring on some really smart fantasy football and just football in general people who also happen to be fans of the team. So today is no different than that. But we're going to talk about everything about this Vikings team. The rookie sensation from last year, Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins. We got Dalvin Cook. We got a brand new running back that's in the backfield. If you're thinking about Alexander Madison or a brand new rookie, we'll talk about other wide receiver options that'll be kind of fun to break down, and exciting tight end. We'll do that all after I introduce you to these people right after this video. What's up, PJ? PJ in the chat. Yeah, I did. I got a haircut. Thanks, PJ. I appreciate you noticing. But yeah, we are here to talk about this Vikings team and a lot of interesting things. A defense that might be back. Maybe some reason for a lot of optimism here in the division. So to talk about all of this, like I said, I love to invite smart football people, and I got a guy here in Evan who is, I think, what time is it there right now, Evan?
1:02 a.m.
Such commitment and devotion. Really appreciate you staying up and fixing yourself a latte a couple hours ago, I think you said. Yeah, there you go. So we can talk about this Vikings team and break it down. And yeah, you're with Dynasty Nerds. You wear a lot of hats, and appreciate that. Anything you want to plug right here off the top?
No, man, you said it. I do writing and ranking over at Dynasty Nerds mostly at the moment, and then stuff like this with some awesome people like you.
I appreciate that. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about Vikings with you. Yeah, right underneath the guy who said he doesn't do a lot of guest spots. So I appreciate you having in you to come on and talk about the Vikings. Dan Thury at Beer Fuel Thury. Am I saying that right? Thury?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. So he's got his own podcast, co-host there. Been in Scott Fishbowl for a while, it looks like, huh?
Yeah, it's 4 straight years now. Yeah. I've been getting pretty lucky. Scott must really like me for some reason.
There you go. Very good. So we'll be doing that here. It looks like we share love for Elijah Moore, so we won't talk about that on this show. But anything else?
If you want to talk about Elijah Moore,
might.
I always love talking about Elijah Moore.
Oh, good question here. What are you sipping on, Dan?
I am drinking the Stills Wild Sour series. This is their Key Lime Gosa. I actually work for the brewery. I'm a beer sales rep here out in Illinois. So it kind of fits into the theme of what I podcast on between craft beer and fantasy football.
Yeah, alcohol podcast with a football problem. I like that. You're saying there. That's good. That's good. Love that. Yep. Yeah, I've already got some Vikings fan in here. Skull, definitely exciting group, those Minnesota Viking folks, and we're here to talk about their upcoming season here and dynasty prospects. And we talk, we've got training camp going on and about to start some preseason games. So it's an exciting time, lots of information. Evan, let's start with you. What camp battles or storylines or things that you've seen so far you paying the most attention to for the Vikings?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple that there's one that really actually concerns me, and I don't know, I haven't heard that many people talking about it. It's the fact of we have like the lowest rate of like COVID vaccinations in the league in our team, which is not ideal. Obviously I know a lot of people can make it a political issue, and I get that it's personal choice and all that sort of stuff. But I think just even from watching some of the press conferences, you can tell that Zimmer is getting pretty frustrated with where this leaves them as a team, with having such a disappointing year last year, like you've mentioned, wanting to bounce back, wanting to be a better defense, wanting to just compete, and actually I think this team still has Super Bowl aspirations, whether rightful, or wrong. And I just think things like that, it just makes it so much more difficult than it even has to be, because it could easily put, half the squad out of commission for a game, have backups, or even just make us potentially forfeit a game, which would be a nightmare. So that's something I've been really, watching and kind of concerned about. I mean, Cousins seems pretty adamantly anti-vax, so I don't think that'll change. He seems like a kind of guy, once he's made up his mind, it's pretty hard to talk him out of it. But yeah, that's one of the big ones. Actually, one of the, on a more positive note, one of the more surprising ones for me has been, I've been getting a lot of buzz, hearing a lot of buzz about KJ Osborne, which is very surprising, especially, I know with some people were mentioning with the scare for Justin Jefferson, they were saying, look, what about Amir Smith Marset, new rookie, lightning quick, maybe he's going to step up and have a bigger option. The thing is, I think that as well. I was really excited about him. I've got him in a few leagues. I've heard a couple worrying sort of quotes from Zimmer. Actually, he's been saying things like, he's going to have to step up his game on special teams if he wants to make the roster, things like that. No, that could just be Zimmer, trying to light a fire and get more out of him. I wouldn't put it past him. But at the same time, I've actually been hearing a lot of rave reviews about KJ Osborne basically every day at camp. Just really, he's been putting in a lot of work in the offseason, working with Stephon Diggs, working with Justin Jefferson, apparently just really working on his route running and his hands and things like that. He's looking really sharp. So there's actually a lot of people kind of feeling like he could potentially be locking up the third receiver option there, which is quite surprising. And to be honest, he's probably on a lot of people's waiver wires. So especially if you're playing in any sort of deeper league, might be worth just going in and at him for free right now and just see how things shake out over preseason.
Man, I love that. That's a great call. That's not a name that I even thought about. So I love that you brought that one up right off the top, coming in hot. Dan, how about you? What are you paying the most attention to here with the Vikings?
Well, I mean, you brought up the COVID spot with with Cousins and the QB room and everything else. I actually brought up Amir Smith Marset as the other point. It's funny because if KJ Osborne hits, I have a bunch of his rookie cards, bunch of auto rookie cards from him. So let's hope, right? I also like that call too because they have a lot of guys that can step up and be the special teams monster, which is what I think they need. Amir Abdullah's been good. He's been about above average, but he hasn't been in the league. He's also 28 years old, and he may have to play more of a actual running back role with the extra game this season. Helping spell Dalvin Cook when it's not just Madison doing it. So you may see some of these rookies come in. You have the running back. I'm not even going to try to how to pronounce his name.
Kenny Nwangwu?
Yeah, Nwangwu. Between him, Smith Marset, you have two dynamic kickoff returners. You have your boy KJ Osborne, who can also potentially fill in as a punt returner. And this is what we want to see from our deep dynasty stash guys is the way you make the roster as a low end of the depth chart is to make special teams. So it pains me to hear that Smith Marset is potentially struggling. Because I wasn't the biggest fan pre-draft process, but when you turn on the film, you get to see the fact that he was a 4-star recruit coming out, or I believe he was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school as a defensive back. So then he, convert playing at a non-passing school like Iowa, you hope that, he can turn something around. So I'm very interested to see who the number 3 spot is. I hope it's not Westbrook. Hope it's not, Chad Beebe or BC Johnson, because we know who those guys are at this point, in their careers. And I think this passing offense could use a nice deep threat to help, complement what they get from Jefferson and Thielen.
Yeah, I love that. And so with Osborne, and this is a question from Kennedy here, is he worth a stash in Dynasty? And I think you're saying, yeah, right, Evan?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say, don't cut anybody. Don't be dropping Henderson on the waiver wire or something like that to pick up him. But if you're playing in any sort of 12, 14, 16 team leagues, I mean, if you're in that sort of a league, I'm in a couple 16 team. I'm actually in a league like that with you, man. We're in a 16 team, 53 man roster, full IDP. I mean, you can always cut somebody. So, if you've got a couple of bench spots going, or, just a couple of guys that you're thinking may not even play, yeah, pick them up. Just see how things shake out. You probably will know a lot more over the next couple of preseason games, see how things are shaking out. See what Dede is looking like when he's coming back here. Is he going to get involved? Is he just more of a special teams? Are they going to ease him in? That sort of situation. But I would stash him. Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, he's going to be free. I mean, I guarantee you, if you're in 10 leagues, he's probably on the waiver wire in 9 of them.
I want to ask you about Dede Westbrook, and you mentioned it there about him, kind of not wanting him to be the answer, Dan. But like, there is that connection with Keenan McCardell, who came over as part of the coaching staff here, there in Minnesota, and very familiar. So you almost feel like they wouldn't have brought him in if there wasn't like at least something from Keenan, who is a well-respected wide receiver coach, to say like, hey, yeah, this is a guy I believe in that could help us fill the spot.
I mean, it might be. It's one of those things, with him coming out of Oklahoma, with him having that successful start to his career with Jacksonville, and then they see the turmoil that he had to go through with that team. Obviously, he gets cut, moves on. I believe he bounces around from a couple teams. Now he lands here. I'm a fan. I'm not going to say that. I shouldn't say that I hope that he doesn't make the team. That's the wrong thing to say. But I think we've seen the best from him. And in a low passing volume offense, him being a bit older, he's 27 and a half, will be 28 this season. It's not the best in terms of your dynasty outlook. And for redraft value, you're not betting on a number 3 receiver on a low volume passing offense like Minnesota. So I would rather see one of the rookies or one of the second-year players, take that next step forward, and then hopefully we have something there where Westbrook is probably more of a veteran who, if he can recover properly, maybe we get 1 year of him, and then that's that.
Kellen Mond is another one of the rookies. We mentioned Amir Smith, Marset, Kellen Mond, but we haven't gotten to see much of him because he's been on the COVID list and not likely to see him this weekend, according to the most recent reports. But makes you start wondering. I mean, they spent some decent draft capital on bringing him in, right? A 3rd-round rookie pick. That's not, somebody I guess you're investing in to say this is going to be our starter. But I mean, he's a guy that can use his legs a little bit, and it makes you wonder if the Vikings are starting to look towards the future. Do you think Kirk Cousins is going to be in town for the next few years? Or, Evan, do you think like we could be nearing the end of Kirk Cousins in Minnesota?
Yeah, I do think so. I think it's complicated with his contract situation. I believe, I don't have the exact numbers, but I'm pretty sure next year is like pretty much.
I'm pulling it up right now.
And I think they have like a 45 million cap hit or something if they get rid of him or something like that. So it's looking pretty likely that he is there next year. But, one thing I was thinking about even tonight before we came on here was the fact that so much stuff is happening all the time now in the league that we think of as unprecedented. I mean, we were talking about, there's no way that Gurley gets cut because of his contract. There's no way that, who they're going to trade for Stafford. There's no way, and there's all these no ways this is going to happen. No way that's going to happen. And, I think that teams are really just getting more and more aggressive in their moves, and they're getting more and more, they're not happy just to sit and be sort of status quo, be in the middle of the pack. And I think that if we have another season like we did last year, this will be the 3rd, 4th season in a row of Cousins. And it's just been, we kind of broke the bank to go out and get him. And, we were really excited to have a proper QB in the building. And it's just not been what we wanted. We really thought we were on our way towards a Super Bowl. And now we're like hardly making the playoffs or not making the playoffs. And I mean, me personally, I don't think Kirk Cousins is the answer, so I would be quite happy to see the back of him. But I think financially, it could be another year or so of him. But we'll see how it goes. I do think, like you said, I don't think Mond is necessarily the answer or the sign of the downfall of Kirk Cousins or anything. But I think it's definitely a step in that direction where they're realizing that, this isn't good enough the way things have been going. Cousins had his statistically best year ever last year, and we still sucked. We still missed the playoffs. I mean, that's mostly on the defense, to be fair. But it's just not. He's not I don't think he's that kind of guy that's gonna win you a Super Bowl. Unless you had like the perfect team and you dropped him into that perfect situation. If you dropped him into the 49ers from a couple years ago, he probably could have won the Super Bowl. But we're not the 49ers. We don't have that, all things going for us yet.
What do you think, Dan?
Yeah. I'm in the same boat, 45 million cap hit. We're not going to, it seems unrealistic, even though we just lost Philadelphia, move Carson Wentz after that debacle. I think the Mon could tip the cat to the point where, just like Evan said, if we struggle this year, if the Vikings struggle this year, his lease may not be as long as people think it is. You may see Mon come up and start. As a point of, it's not like a Jalen Hurts situation where Hurts had a lot of buzz coming out of Alabama and then Oklahoma. Mon kind of was who he was through his 4 years. It was at Texas A&M, I believe it was. But it could be the bridge point right there, right? Like, it could be a luxury pick where the Patriots drafted Jimmy G. They got to see 4-game sample size when there was no Brady. Then they removed them for a 2nd-round pick. Damn near equal value. Mon, could be that way where we feel comfortable. We move off from Cousins. We take the 1 or 2 bad years with Mond, and then we get a new quarterback, hopefully, of the future. Watching him not trade up for Justin Fields broke my heart, but there were some people in the coaching staff that said that they liked Mond more than Justin Fields, and of course the value is significantly different without having to move up in the 1st round and have him drop to you in the 3rd.
Yeah, Mond's rushing yards are actually he had more college rushing yards than the Trey Lance, Justin Fields, that group. So somebody that can get it done with his legs. So I don't know. It could be interesting.
Yeah. One thing I would say as well, just kind of going back to what we were talking about even, is the dynamic between Zimmer and Cousins. Just in certain comments that he's made and, certain things he said, I get the feeling that there might be some butting of heads going on behind closed doors.
Possibly.
And I think if they make a decision, ultimately they do seem to like Zimmer, and if they make a decision, it could come down to almost a reverse Aaron Rodgers situation, instead of the quarterback, being like, it's my way or the highway. It could just be Zimmer being like, look, get rid of this guy or I'm out of here. I can't deal with this anymore. So that could be another situation. Who knows? We might see Brett Favre 2.0. We might see, Aaron Rodgers in Minnesota next year.
Oh my God. You imagine that?
That would be insane, man.
He actually wins the Super Bowl.
Oh, right. It took me so long to get my head around. I grew up hating Brett Favre so much. When he came to Minnesota, I was like, I don't know how to feel. I cannot cope with this. This is not good. But actually, another interesting thing, just real quickly about, quarterbacks and the situation. Obviously, it is early days. There was the COVID situation, but apparently, Kellen Mond has been quite up and down as well, which is understandable for rookies. But surprisingly, I've been hearing that Jake Browning has been doing really well in camp, and they're actually considering potentially keeping on 3 quarterbacks on the roster, which is something that the Vikings don't normally do. So it's an interesting situation. It definitely makes me feel like, not that they want Cousins to fail, but I think that they're not putting all their eggs in one basket. They're not looking to Kirk Cousins as the savior.
Well, whoever is playing quarterback is likely to put a lot of their eggs into one particular basket that gave us a scare the other day in Justin Jefferson. Now, obviously, there's other receiving options that are out there too. This question answers itself pretty easily, I guess, with Justin Jefferson as far as this team is concerned. But I guess what we saw last year with him breaking records, being, having the most receiving yards, all that stuff for a rookie. Do you think, Dan, let me ask it to you this way. Do you think we saw his ceiling in a sense that if that Vikings defense is better, can he get better enough to compensate for that?
He had 25% target share last year. He's one of the more efficient receivers with the football in his hands. With how bad the Vikings defense was, they were bottom 10 at both against the run and pass. They were only 25th in passing attempts per game. With an improved defense, as in 2019, when they were just above average, maybe a little bit better than that, they were 31st in pass attempts per game. Not to say that we've seen the ceiling of Justin Jefferson. We may have seen the ceiling within this offense, within the Mike Zimmer wanting to run the football, wanting to be that dominant run game during neutral game situations when the games are within 7 points. We may see that. But again, he did so much when Thielen was a bit banged up at times. I want to say Jefferson was double-digit targets the last, I think, 5 or 6 games of the season last year. And if the Vikings get into a battle for a wild card spot or a battle for the NFC North title, you may see them lean a little bit more on him. Thielen and getting a bit older. The potential rise of Irv Smith. I don't see a whole lot of targets being taken away from him. I just don't know how much they're going to have to pass in terms of if the defense steps up. The games are generally close. You ride Dalvin Cook. You ride, Madison will see his 25 to 30% snap shares every game, if not more, in games that they're winning. And they may just ride this out. And that's, again, all based on that defense and if they can keep the games close. Because we've seen that from Zimmer. It's not just a 1 or 2 year thing. It's every single year is they want to run the football, be this quote unquote balance. But when the games are within reach, outside of the 2-minute warnings, they're just running the football and not being, that unpredictable.
I'm glad you mentioned that because 27th in passing attempts. That definitely, they were just very efficient with it, and I think you can do that when you've got a talent like Justin Jefferson. And I'm partial to the former Bayou Bengal from here in Louisiana, so I'm big fan of his. I guess I would be less worried if Aaron Rodgers was throwing him passes next year, right, Evan?
Yeah. That would be. I mean, as much as I hate him because he's a Packer, I mean, that would be pretty awesome. He is incredible.
It'd be like a better Favre. It'd be like if Favre was actually a hyper efficient quarterback and all that. I mean, I don't know if it will happen. Denver and John Elway will go out there and throw the entire bank at him.
Right. Yeah. So, but Adam Thielen is a guy that still exists, right? So he's here in this offense and he's 30 years old, but do you expect him to take a step back, or do you think he might be a guy that we're undervaluing a little bit?
I mean, he was 24.4, I think it's 24 target share, bad defense. 2019 when we had a lot better defense, roughly 18%. I don't think it'll be that low. But if you're, seeing lower volume, his target share takes a bit of a dip as Jefferson, comes up in his own. If we get a compliment wide receiver 3 and a far better tight end, at least athletically, and Irv Smith, Thielen, you may start to see a bit of a dip there. I think he'll get his own, but I think his ADP right now is in the early 5th, and that's a bit of a reach. It's a bit rich, at that point for a receiver who's a clear number 2 on a low volume. A potentially low passing volume offense.
Yeah, Dynasty, DLF's ADP, he's going wide receiver 37, which, that's right around the Elijah Moore range. So, I think in Dynasty, who would you rather have?
Moore.
Yeah.
All day. I love Elijah Moore.
Yep. Evan, what do you think about, I guess, Adam Thielen? Obviously, he's been really good there, but, do you think we could be staring at someone who, just at that 30 age mark, he's going over that age cliff and his production could dip?
The thing is, so I think it's like probably both of you guys, when you're playing Dynasty and just with football, when you're researching and trying your best to analyze things, it's sort of a numbers game, but there is also the tail of the tape. And for me, watching him last year, I didn't see somebody who was slowing down. I didn't see somebody who's struggling. I didn't see somebody who looked lesser than. I mean, he looked amazing, to me. When I was watching him last year, his routes were looking great. His intensity looks great. He's a clear red zone target for Cousins. Cousins locks in on him in the red zone. He had a lot of touchdowns and stuff. I mean, I do think, going back to sort of the points that we were touching on, I was laughing about it because I did the Vikings team preview for Dynasty Nerds and are sort of looking at all the different teams because I chose to do the Vikings because obviously it's my team, and I was looking at some of the stats and I'll read these out because they're comical. It does go along with what you guys were talking about. It was the yin and yang last year. Our offense was actually very good, and as good as our offense was, the defense was equally terrible. And I mean, on the offensive side, we were the 11th best for points scored. and we were the 29th best for points allowed. This is mind-blowing to me. I mean, I don't know how often this happens for teams, but we literally so our offensive average was 393.3 yards per game, which was fourth best in the NFL. We allowed 393.3 yards per game, which was the 27th. So this is mind-blowing. I mean, this is literally, I'm not making this up. We actually, over the season, we got 6,292 yards of offense, and we allowed 6,292 yards in defense. It's unbelievable.
You brought that up. I literally had that down in my notes. It is insane. I can't believe you brought that up.
It's like some sort of trivia thing. It has to be. I mean, so you look at literally, it just keeps going. It's like we were 4.88 yards per run, which is fourth best. We were 7.77 yards per pass attempt, which was third best. But we allowed 7.65 yards per attempt, which was 30th in the NFL. We went for it 23 times on fourth down, which is the most in our franchise history. We converted on 13, which is 17th, so it's middle of the pack. It's not too bad. But our opponents went for it 24 times, and they converted 17 of those, which is 70.83, which was, you guessed it, 30th in the NFL.
Yeah.
And literally, if you go through just like the main passes, so like offensive points, we were 11th, yards 4th, passing touchdowns 6th, rushing yards 5th, rushing touchdowns 6th, red zone touchdowns 4th, and overall touchdowns 7th. So basically a top 10, sometimes a top 5 offense last year. Defense, exact same categories: points 30th, yards 27th, passing touchdowns 23rd, rushing yards 27th, rushing touchdowns 24th, red zone touchdowns 17th, and overall touchdowns 25th. And for sacks, we were 28th, and forced fumbles, we were 26th. So yeah, all that to say, I mean, our defense was terrible last year. Didn't help. We lost Danielle Hunter. That is a massive blow to any team. We lost quite a few of our players to injury throughout the year on defense, but we also had a terrible secondary that was mostly rookies and young players. I think Zimmer's really gone out of his way to bring in a lot of veterans. He's brought in Patrick Peterson. He's brought in Xavier Woods. He's brought in a lot of guys who they may not be, like the Jamal Adams or they're not the flashy, big, massive names, but they're veterans. They know what's happening. Like we were saying earlier, I think all he needs is for our defense to be like middle of the road again. If our defense is middle of the road, we know our offense can do. We know that we can like ball out if we need to or when we want to with our run game, even with these weapons that we've got in passing. So my fear, I suppose, bringing it back to Thielen, would be if our defense does take that step up, which what I'm hearing in camp is that, Brashad McKenzie, Xavier Woods are all actually looking pretty good. So the secondary is looking much improved on last year, which wouldn't be hard to do. And Danielle Hunter is looking amazing in camp, apparently. Like, he doesn't look like he's lost a step. He looks better than ever, which is massive. To me, my fear would be if we take a step up and our defense is just even middle of the pack, let alone a top third. But if we're middle of the pack, then exactly like we mentioned, Zimmer, he's made it super clear. He wants to be a run-first team. He wants to give Dalvin Cook 25 rushes a game, which is awesome if you have Dalvin Cook. I mean, that's brilliant. But I think I'm not worried about Justin Jefferson at all. He's so young, he's so talented, and it's the same sort of thing. We were all worried about AJ Brown when he went to Tennessee, but the cream rises to the top. So I'm not worried about him. As far as Thielen, if I'm a contender, I'm more than happy to get Thielen because everybody in Dynasty tends to freak out about age so much that you can get him pretty cheap. You can usually get him as a throw in into a bigger deal, or you can get him for a late first, early second, or something like that. And if that's what you need as your third wide receiver, or your fourth wide receiver, to get you over the top, I still think he'll have a good year. He's still going to be a red zone look for Cousins. He's still going to be, Cousins, for all his faults, is an efficient passer. He is an accurate quarterback, and he does throw a good amount of touchdowns. So I think he'll be good this year. I don't think he's, hit the age cliff and he's dead. I don't think he's somebody I'm going to build around if I'm a rebuild or if I'm starting up in if it's a startup draft. I'm not reaching for him, that's for sure. But I don't think, he's dead and buried.
And the good thing is you don't have to. And, I think you mentioned Dalvin Cook there. You mentioned he's a nice cornerstone piece. And obviously the answer to this question, but what gets interesting with the Vikings is that backup spot, because, we want to make sure with a 17-game season, we're thinking about some of these backup spots for sure. So what about, you've got Alexander Madison, who I think has long been one of the, most highly regarded quote unquote handcuffs of the entire NFL. But then they go out and spend a 4th round pick on Kenny Nwangu, who also, by the way, is coming off an Achilles tear, which is pretty interesting since I just did my Rams preview just a little bit ago. And so going to be watching him for sure. But he's worked himself to a place where he was a 4th round pick. So does that show a little bit of a lack of trust from this Vikings organization, or do they just want to continue to stock and restock with what they've got in the backfield, Evan?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the Vikings, a couple of things. I mean, we let Mike Boone go this year, and he was just, one of those guys, special teams ace, good backup, solid guy. He's gone to Denver now, and I think, we really have a clear type last several years, super athletic, and that is certainly Nwangwu. He's insanely fast. He was a special teams ace. So to me, it's more speaking to the probably wanting him to get involved in special teams, give us some punch with our kick returns or punt returns. And just being a guy, to be fair, I've heard that he is looking really good in camp and stuff like that. So, but with the extension and with the way Zimmer likes to play and stuff, I'm not worried about, Dalvin Cook. And if somebody is worried about him, I'm happy to, alleviate their worries and take him onto my team. So honestly, that's the thing with Madison as well. I think he is I think he's a very talented player, and it is sad. It's similar to Pollard, really. Like, if they were on a different team, they could probably be a really exciting piece for your dynasty team. But I do see him as just a handcuff, really, to be honest with you. I don't see him being even a flex option, really, unless Cook goes down.
Right, which we don't want to see, obviously. But Dan, what do you think about obviously Dalvin Cook stud? But we don't need to spend too much time on him. But like behind him, is there anything for us to be mining for dynasty?
I mean, it's all what Evan said. I mean, it's pretty cut and dry with his backfield. I wasn't the highest on Madison coming out of BYU, but this is the perfect offense for him, right? Like he's on a Dalvin Cook clone, but he fits perfectly with what they want to do. Like in the splashes we've seen him in, because I don't think he's played a game in Cook's absence, because when Cook misses a game, for some reason, he's not there either. And we don't quite know if he can handle a full workload. Beyond that, I think that's where you see, some of these draft picks. Amir is just a 3rd down specialist, and then special teams. If if they decide to go that way again this season, I'm not putting whole much stock in it. If something were to happen to Cook, I'm probably going to try to move Madison, because I think his value is going to go so high up the roof with the unknown and just the small splash plays that you see, that if you're not a contender, you can easily try to move off of them. Obviously you'll target the Cook owner, but you may see other teams try to go up and pay for them, because they see the splash plays, they see the 1 or 2 drives. I actually think that Madison could have some flex value this year. The same way that I think Pollard does as well. With that extra game with Cooks, he hasn't played a full season yet. Like, he's dominant when he plays, but like even in the games that he does and he's healthy, they'd still try to dedicate at least a series or 2 to Madison. And yes, you don't want to, buy in that too much, but he's the perfect best ball back late round. He's the perfect, late stash, even though I think he's going a bit too much right now in redraft. He's a guy that will likely get dropped after the first few weeks, and then you just pick him up and wait, or you just pick him up if something happens to Cook, if you're in redraft purposes. For Dynasty, though, I'm not too excited, because I think he was drafted solely to back up Cook, and then if something were to happen or they move on from him, you'll just see a potentially new overhaul to the backfield.
Tried to avoid talking about the tight end position to save it for this spot, because if there is a sleeper on this team, it probably does belong with the pretty athletic guy there, 6'2". He's 6'2",
What, Tyler Conklin?
Irv Smith, he's going off as a tight end 13, and just seems like he's 23 years old somehow still. Like, he's still really super young and a lot of talent. No Kyle Rudolph there. Dan, what are your expectations for what you expect to see out of Irv Smith?
So Rudolph missed the final, I think, 4 or 5 games of the season last year from weeks. Small game, but without Rudolph, Smith snap share against the Bears, Saints, and Detroit, so weeks 15 through 17, 88.9, 91.4, 80.3. It's going to be on the field more, right? Like we expect that to happen. I think I've heard Conklin's having a good camp as well. I expect Conklin to be on the field more. If they don't trust a third receiver, you may see more 12 packages, which means you're seeing more dual tight end sets. They kept Conklin on this long. They must like him for a reason. Smith is the same way. He's a red zone threat. He's athletic. You can help him work up the seam. Again, just like with Thielen, it's going to be volume. Is there enough volume there for him? We haven't had a relevant tight end, at least for fantasy, like true relevancy in 3 or 4 years since, when Rudy was the number 2 tight end, and that injury riddled season 4 tight ends where no Gronk, no Graham that year. And he just made his way through touchdowns. He's a fine in redraft. Obviously he's a fine, streaming tight end. I'm not going to spend up for him. If I'm not getting one of my top 3 or top 4, I'm just going to wait and see. Obviously, premium leagues, it depends because he doesn't get a lot of targets, so you're not going to gain the biggest benefit from it. Dynasty, he's a fine player. Like he's a great player. It's just whether or not this offense will throw enough to support him alongside of a Jefferson and Thielen, and then obviously Cook's sitting in his own as well.
That's an interesting point too. Yeah, when you start to try to divvy out the targets, that can get a little bit tough. But I don't know, a lot to be excited about there. Look, you came out with a sleeper right away. I mean, Evan, you came out with Osborne. Any other names like that for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think we actually kind of touched on it there. Tyler Conklin. The thing is, so here's my thing with Irv Smith is that I really love him as a player. I think he's incredible. He's very athletic. And honestly, the sky is the limit with him for his potential. But again, this is something I wrote about in my preview for the Vikings. I'm a little bit like I'm the sort of bad news bears when it comes to Irv. I don't think it's him. I think it's the Vikings. I think it's the way they run their packages, the way they run their system. I mean, when last year, for example, they passed to the tight end 22% of the time, which doesn't sound terrible, 25% of the time, quarter of the time almost. But like we've talked about with a lower passing, they even passed more last year than they normally would, because of the way their defense was so bad. Still was only 107 passes last year to the tight end position. And that was 22nd in the league. So they're in the bottom sort of third of the league for utilizing the tight end. And the thing is, like we talked about there with, Kyle missing the last 3 or 4 games of the season, you would think, oh, happy days, Irv Smith to the moon. He's going to get double-digit targets or something, But the truth is, in 2019, he had 47 targets, and in 2020, he had 43 targets. And over that stretch, when Kyle Rudolph went down, they just basically brought in Tyler Conklin. And Tyler Conklin and Irv Smith did what Irv Smith and Kyle Rudolph were doing before. And the thing is, Tyler Conklin, he's not a household name. He's not a sexy name, but he's a good, solid tight end. I heard a quote from Cousins the other day saying, it's his 4th year in the league, but it feels like he's been around for 10 years. So he's got a lot of savvy. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's about. They really like him. So I expect both of them to eat into each other's value, but at the same time, as far as a stash, especially if in a deeper league or a tight end premium league, I would say Tyler Conklin or, really interesting, their draft pick this year, Zach Davidson, I think you call him. He's a 5th round tight end that the guy's super, super athletic. He's 6'6", 6'7". He's insane. He was literally a punter and tight end in college, which is unbelievable. He's insanely athletic. Like I said, Vikings have a type. He's super athletic. He had an unbelievable, look it up. He had an unbelievable production in college. He was averaging 22 yards per reception or something ridiculous. It was absolutely ungodly. Wow. But he's another guy that you could keep an eye on, especially if you are in those deeper leagues, 14, 16 teams. You got a bench spot or you got a taxi squad, just throw him on there, see what happens. So yeah, those would be a couple for me, as far as guys that could be, relatively cheap or completely free on the waiver wire.
Shane Zylstra is the all-time collegiate career leader in Minnesota State's all-time receptions, receiving yards, touchdowns, and his older brother was the kicker right there punter for the Vikings, right? Brandon Zylstra.
Brandon Zylstra.
Crazy.
It's funny. Which is a fun fact. So Irv Smith and Conklin both had 16 targets in that 3-game span. Conklin actually had a higher target per route run percentage as well. So Conklin getting targeted more when he runs his route than Irv Smith. I think Evan, the point there is that it may be split more, right? You may see more of it where both tight ends, when they form together, will be a French tight end one, but apart will just be a massive headache to fantasy owners. Which is why I say wait. I mean, you don't let someone draft them, in those one tight ends, and then eventually potentially get dropped during bye weeks, or we'll see, or just wait and see. Those, if it's not a top 4 or 5, then why reach?
Dan, Irv Smith or Cole Kmet?
I think Kmet got used more down the stretch. Jimmy Graham is back still. I expect the offense. Somehow, some way, the dude just doesn't want to quit. I think the Bears still have to throw more. I'd take Cole Kmet.
Interesting. Evan, what do you think about those two? They're going right back to back right now in DLF's ADP.
Ooh, yeah, I would probably say Kmet, to be honest, and especially in Dynasty. Yeah, Jimmy Graham might be around this year, might be annoying this year, similar to the Irv Smith, Tyler Conklin situation. But I think the problem at the moment is just more of a theological problem with the Vikings, how they want to use their tight ends. Whereas I think, once Kmet takes over, he should be the guy, You
may see it this year.
Huge.
It'll cost less because people, they see Irv Smith and they think sleeper or breakout candidate. Then they see, Kmet with the Bears and their 18,000 tight ends, and they're like, all right, fine, I'll pay a little bit less for Kmet, who will likely have similar, if not higher, production this year.
We pretty much touched on everybody, so no reason to. We already got your thoughts on everybody. No reason to cover this question, so we'll jump right to this. We mentioned it before. The season didn't go exactly the way that Vikings fans were hoping in 2020, 7-9. But 17-game season now. You mentioned the additions to the defense, which look like Vikings could take a huge step forward in terms of their defense, I think. I don't know what you guys think, but what does that mean in terms of their record? So, Evan, start with you. 17-game season. What's the record going to be?
I'm more concerned with the vaccination stuff, the all the internal discourse and stuff. I don't know. I genuinely, I think the last couple of years have just broken me, as a Vikings fan. I go into the season, I'm the opposite of most fans. I go into the season expecting the worst, and then I'm never that disappointed. I would say we're going to be 9-8 or whatever.
9-8. Dan, what do you think?
I put 11-6. Sweep the Lions, split games against the Bears and Packers, and then big wins against the Rams at home and on the road against the Chargers. This team seems to like to make the playoffs every other year, so it just seems destined for us to be, a wild card team or battle against Green Bay for that top spot. I still think Chicago's a year away, from being back there potentially. I mean, they could surprise. I love Justin Fields, so who knows? But they'll probably mess around with Andy Dalton for too long. It just seems that this will be that year. Again, we'll get a little bit of hope, and then we'll be clearly not a great team compared to the other playoff teams. I think if everything else remains the same, no injuries, no problem with COVID, I do love a roster from top to bottom. Great all around. I expect the offensive line to continue to improve. Hopefully, Darasel can get healthy. Get those reps that he needs. I expect the defense to take a massive step forward, especially the front four. with getting Michael Pierce back because he opted out last year. That was a big D-line acquisition in 2020. And then you get the guy from the Giants who spent, I think it was a 3rd-round pick on another big tackle. Like, we were the 27th against the run. We'll be top 3 this year. We just got to hope that our young secondary on top of with Smith and with hopefully Peterson can give us 1 or 2 glorious years of his resurgence. And that's that. It's a little faith, but I went through the schedule and, we get to NFC West and we get to AFC North. Like, we couldn't draw 2 worse divisions.
Yeah.
For this year. So
optimistic for that. Yeah. We didn't touch on it, but 34-year-old Clint Kubiak, the younger Kubiak, like any worries about him taking over? Do you think it's going to be seamless between, the transition from his dad to him?
No, he'll be fine.
Yeah. No worries.
I'm always worried. I'm always worried, man. Like I just miss the Randy Moss, Chris Carter days.
Oh yeah.
I miss being more like vertical. Like I kind of miss Case Keenum 17. I miss Case Keenum 17. I miss, Gunslinger. I'm not good, but I got, propped it up by Pat Shurmur, and who just seems to get the most out of journeyman quarterbacks for like 16 games.
Yeah, it sucks, man. Like I sort of, as a fan, like I hate our style of football.
It's so
it's so like 90s or something, know. It's just like, let's play tough defense and run the ball down their throats,
It's like there's
I hate
so
it.
There's so much data out there to suggest why teams should want to pass more, and like the whole Mike Leach mindset of you don't have to be balanced by running the football as much as you're passing it. Like you're supposed to utilize like those high efficient short passes as a way to run the football. I just wish we were more like that. Like I love Zimmer.
Yeah, even like I love like what the Bills have been doing and stuff, the way they've been changing their franchise and changing the way that they approach the game from top to bottom, and it's just been beautiful to watch. I wish, man, like I would love to have someone like Josh Allen in the Vikings, or even just have a coach like McDermott, who's like obviously willing to be cutting edge in the way he looks at things, and even just the way that they utilize their run game. They're just like not worried about it. They're like, well, why would we focus on that when we're so good at this? Like it's like they're just not worried about it. They utilize RPOs really well. Even though they don't run a lot, they utilize that whole that whole scheme very, very well to manipulate the defense. And they're just like, hey, Josh Allen's killing it, let's just let him kill it. Whereas I feel like even when Kirk Cousins is on a tear and he's lighting it on fire, because he does go through those games where he's just like unstoppable, and you're like, this guy's incredible, what's happening? It's like Zimmer doesn't like that or something. It's like he wants to rein it back in. He's like, hold on. Because we were like really bad with our I think we were really bad. One of the only things offensively, I think we were really low with our our plays, like how many plays we run and stuff. We're very slow pace.
25th in the league last year, I think it was.
Yeah, it was terrible. It's so frustrating because Cook is so good and Justin Jefferson is amazing. Like he's so incredible. It's so frustrating that we don't have the and even Irv Smith, like we said, it's so frustrating.
Yeah, put him in an offense that's going to throw the ball a ton, and that would be pretty interesting to see how he would do. And it's so funny when you say that. It reminds me of like, I don't know if you ever used to play like the was it NBA Jam where they were like, he's heating up, and you'd set somebody on fire, and it's like Zimmer's like, all right, take him out. Let's put somebody else in.
That's right.
Yeah, he's getting too hot. Put on in.
Yeah. All right, that's a great breakdown, guys. Thank you so much, Evan. Thank you for staying up and doing this. And Dan, obviously, really enjoyed being able to podcast, live stream with you here about these Vikings, and enjoyed your insight. Make sure that everyone out there, make sure you're following these guys, all their great work, everything that they're doing. Obviously, really smart about what they're doing. So I am at Calvin and Hobby for at DL Football. Make sure you're following that. And make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Just look down below, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, all that good stuff. All the things the kids say, notifications, comment, all that. For these guys for DLF, I am at Calvin and Hobby.